Welcome to How They Do That. I'm your host, Scott Waldron, and here is a little preview of what you're going to hear today.
So I was in my late 20s, early 30s. He's in his 70s. And he told me one day, he said, Mike, every single time in the last 40 years that we've narrowed the scope of our business, sales have spiked. If you look back and you look for the positives or the gains or the wins in the day, there's science behind this, that you will actually force yourself into a more positive attitude the next day. If you see a failure or a lost client as an opportunity to learn, that's just such a different mindset.
You're about to hear from a very special person. Yes, I know Mike personally through just work through the Giant community. The Giant community is a network of Giants leadership consultants and coaches that are all over the world. And on this podcast, we don't just feature Giants, but Giant is on here at times because that's who I am connected with. Mike is one of the most liberating people that I have ever met. And we're going to talk about this nickname that he has right at the beginning of the show. And he's going to tell you a little bit about that nickname that has that kind of word liberation in it and why it's coined to Mike. So he's going to talk today about mentorship. Let me introduce you to Mike, though. Mike's lived in the Southwest regions of the United States as well as the sunny coast of Florida. He's been on both sides. But in 2022, as a partner of Giant, Mike and his family actually moved halfway around the world to the country of Bhutan in order to expand Giant's presence in Asia. That was a huge monumental piece of news that we all heard a couple years ago, and he has recently returned back to the States, having served his duties there. Mike began his career as an aerospace engineer at Honeywell after earning a degree in electrical engineering from Arizona State University. And he's also worked in healthcare, consulting, technology, and other revenue generating roles. Today, he is the CRO of Giant, assisting people around the world and leveraging what we call the 5 Voices certification program to impact and change leadership culture globally. You're going to get 3 key pieces of information out of this interview because this show is not about Mike. Mike never makes these things about Mike, and you're going to get a little taste of that in this interview. So here we go. Mike, dude, I'm so excited to talk to you.
Scott, you're one of my favorite people, dude. I love your energy, your attitude. You always seem like you're in a good mood. Even if you're not, you're showing up, and I'm feeling energy and excitement, and life is good.
Well, the fact that you said I'm one of your favorite people and you got that on recording, this definitely has to go out now. I'm just going to loop that one part over and over.
That'll be the soundbite everyone will be like, hey, Scott's my favorite person. Scott's, yeah, that'll be it. I get it. Yeah.
People will be hooked. They will not, you can't help but listen to this episode.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. Okay, man, we always play where in the world is Mike Oppedahl? Yeah. Because we don't know where you are. You're in Albuquerque today, but you have been all over the world launching leadership. I mean, it is the essence of who you are and who you've been. And call you in the Giant community. We are fellow Giants, and as coaches and consultants inside the Giant community, call you the Bulldog of Liberation. Where did that name come from?
Yeah. And sometimes people hear that and they go, what's that about? Why do you let people call you that? I've gotten that a few times. And, you don't get to pick your nickname. It always gets put upon you, right? My last name's Oppedahl. So when I was a kid, it was Opie, right? And so people call me that name. And so I had to shorten. And so the Bulldog really came from this idea of liberation, meaning we always say to fight for the highest possible good in the lives of others. And so for us, it was really important to not just say that to people, but to do it. And so they call me the Bulldog because they say, I'll latch on to you and I'll keep fighting for you until it's a present tense reality. That was the end of the definition that we had for one of our core values, was that you continue fighting until it's a present tense reality. So I just took it seriously and said, I'm going to keep fighting for people until they feel liberation.
Well, I have witnessed it. I've witnessed it. I have felt it. So thanks for living it. Thanks for living it. You have built a very successful consulting practice. Tell us a little bit about that. What have you been able to do in the course of your years of launching? You didn't start out doing this. kind of came into it? And then what have you been able to do since the start of your business versus kind of where you are now?
Yeah. So to your point, really quickly, my background was aerospace engineering. I worked at Honeywell on fighter jets and helicopters out of college. I worked at a healthcare startup for 5 years, which is really where I got my kind of business 101 degree. And then I came into a consulting practice when it was about $1 million in revenue. But I'd say the theme of this conversation probably, I think, Scott, should be, if I can see further than anyone else, it's because I'm standing on the shoulder of giants. You've heard that quote. And so the reason I say that is because I take no credit for that growth, except for my contribution in that, of course. I can't no false humility. The reality is that it's all about going with others. If you want to go, fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go with others. So I think, part of a theme, Scott, I know you do this podcast and you're going to have lots of different strategies. Mine would be, don't go alone, and make sure that you have other people around you that want to see you succeed. And so I know you asked me to talk about this. We grew that practice from 1 million to 6 million in revenue over the course of about 3 years. And we actually may have gone further, but we changed our business model. So it's not an excuse. It's just we probably could have grown that thing to 10 million, but the purpose was to kind of continue to look at the market, and we shifted models. But I would say, don't go alone, and make sure you've got great people around you.
All right. So that's the premise for where we're going with this thing.
Yeah.
Don't go alone. Because I was talking to you originally, and when I have people on the show, I'm like, I really want people's superpower. I want to how'd you do that? Well, we all have this superpower, this thing that we do pretty well that other people come to us and ask us about. And I was like, Mike, okay, man, I know you've crushed it out there. I want to know how you did that. And you're like, it's not really about me, man. It's not really about me. Which I'll argue a little bit. But you're saying it's about the people that have mentored you. Yeah. You've stood on the shoulders of giants as they've led you. Tell us about that. You're going to introduce us to kind of these three individuals that have inspired you. I don't know who they are yet, but I'm eager to hear.
Awesome, Scott. Yeah. So I want to tell you about three people who have significantly influenced my life. I'm going to go, in a very specific order. So here's the first lesson. There are riches and niches. That's what I'm going to title it. But my first mentor that I had, not first, but my first mentor was my dad, to be fair. As a child, even, he was very intentional to lead me and mentor me. But my first mentor I sought out in my business career was a guy named Bill. Bill ran a pulse-powered engineering company, and he was in his 70s when he was mentoring me. So I was in my late 20s, early 30s. He's in his 70s. And he told me one day, he said, Mike, every single time in the last 40 years that we've narrowed the scope of our business, sales have spiked. And so that's a long version of saying riches and niches, but it's very practical. So when you hear riches and niches, you go, yeah, that's clever and it's pithy because it rhymes. But the reality is, he said, you need to narrow your scope. So you should constantly be narrowing your scope. Scott, you and I have recently been around a book, this idea of 10X. And the point of that is the 80-20 principle, which has been around forever. But I love the Pareto principle. But the idea is you should always be looking at how you can get rid of the noise in your business and focus on the things that are truly getting results.
Okay. Riches and niches. I love the 80-20 principle. It works in so many facets of life and business. And that principle is saying, hey, focus on that 20% that's bringing you the most impact, the most value, the most revenue, et cetera, et cetera.
And the scary part, Scott, is to say no. Especially as you're building a consulting practice, the easiest thing in the world is to say yes to everyone who wants to, because you're like, it feels good. And it's not just it feels good, there's revenue attached. But one of the scariest things to do is to say no, but you should be saying no to the business you don't love doing. And the more you can tell people exactly what you're the best in the world at, the point of this podcast, the more business you're going to get.
Why should I say no, even though there's some revenue attached to it? Even though I may not love doing that thing, why should I say no to that thing?
Yeah. I'm going to give you an example, but I can't say the client's name because I'm happy that they're a client. But there's a large client we have who gave us a very large contract back in 2020, just around the pandemic time. And they've been the most difficult client we've worked with. And the contract value is large, but they'll call you up and say, hey, we need to have a meeting tomorrow afternoon, Wednesday afternoon. Doesn't matter if you're on vacation. Doesn't matter if you had other things to do that were important. Doesn't matter if you had other clients. If you want to work with this client, their brand is so big and they have so much contract value that they basically control you. And so on the surface, you might go, that's a great contract. Look at the money, look at the client, look at the logo. But the fact is that client is draining all the other things you love to do. So you think of it as just like, oh, I had to move one client. Well, what does that say to your other clients? You're showing partiality because of a name or because of a value. That's just one example. But the idea is say no to the things that are going to take you away from doing the thing that only you can do.
And I have found that when I don't do that, I become resentful, or I get kind of drained, or it makes me almost feel icky about the thing I'm doing, which I'm supposed to love doing.
And dude, when you feel like that, you're not going to grow your practice. Like
No.
that's good. That attitude, and it's not you. It's actually what's being created through that relationship. It's draining you from focusing on not only serving in the clients that you love to serve and serving them well, but also on going out and getting new clients that you can serve well.
Okay, number two.
All right. So number 2 is Jeremy Kubicek, and you know Jeremy very well, and so do I. He is the founder of Giant, and you and I are both Giants. And so I'm going to label this one abundance mindset. So I know this made me sound like cliche, but it's really actually, if you go back and think about your thoughts throughout the day, if you do at the end of your day, and this is something Jeremy does, he does a thing called an examine, and he looks at the day and he's like, what meetings did I have? What kind of conversations? And he takes stock of what went on that day. And if you look back and you look for the positives or the gains or the wins in the day, it'll actually, there's science behind this, that you will actually force yourself into a more positive attitude the next day. So Jeremy taught me more than almost anyone in my life, to think abundantly and to see things as opportunities. So going back to that 10X, we talk about, there's this thing, living in the gap or living in the game. Living in the gap means, hey, I compare myself to Skot, or look at that consultant over there. Their practice is twice as big as mine. And I'm living in this place of like, loss, and in this like, life could always be better. But if you look back and look at the wins and the gains in your life, that actually propels you to do more of those things to get you further. So I think the most important thing you can do as a consultant, especially if you haven't figured out how to find people to go with and you're going alone, is you've got to figure out how to have an abundant mindset and see everything as an opportunity.
When we talk about that, Carol Dweck did that research about abundance versus scarcity mindset, and having that and all the science behind it, which is really fascinating. So if you haven't gotten into that book, then check out her book. But it's this idea of like scarcity comes from fear, right? And scarcity comes from not having things and limited beliefs. And then you have abundance, which comes from growth, which comes from a learning mindset. Once I'm in scarcity, I stop learning.
Yes.
Once I'm in abundance, I'm learning all the time.
Yeah.
And that's where that danger really comes into the scarcity mindset. And I got to constantly get myself out of that. Because I totally agree. The scarcity thing is rampant in communities where you feel like you're discouraged, where you're comparing each other all the time, and it's rough.
I love that you said that. So there's another saying, none of these, there's nothing new under the sun. So anything I say is not clever from me, but the opposite of fear is faith. And faith, the root of that word is proceeding in confidence. It's actually like an expectation of a better reality. And so I love that you said that. Scarcity mindset is fear. Abundance mindset is faith. And I totally agree with you that if you're living in that scarcity mindset, it's going to have, there's going to be such a negative impact on so much of your life. And there's no way you're going to be growing a successful and healthy consultant practice if you don't see it that way. And I love that you attach it to learning. So last thing I'll say on that is, if you see a failure or a lost client as an opportunity to learn, that's such a different mindset than a woe is me. Once again, I was at the 1 yard line and the client said no. Like, where's my next paycheck going to come from? If that's your mindset, you're not learning from what could you have done at the 1 yard line to get it over the goal line, so that next time you're in that situation, you don't have the same result.
So good, man. So good. Number three,
and this is my grandfather. My grandfather is 88 years old, 89 this year, and he is still flying airplanes. So he was a fighter pilot in Vietnam, started flying airplanes on farms when he was 15 years old. And he's still flying today at 88 years old. He still has his RFI. And he's been such an inspiration in my life, not because of that, but because after he retired, he had some franchises called Computerland, got the opportunity to work with Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. And so he's just got a fascinating story. And he would never tell it to you, by the way. If he was on your podcast, he'd say like 2 words and then he'd be done. But he sat down with me last summer and we went to a little dive place in like near St. Petersburg, Florida. And I said, Grandpa, I know you were trying to write your life biography, and what are the main lessons from that? And the first thing he said to me was, grandson, you should always be being mentored by someone, and you should always be mentoring someone else. And I was like, wow, like of all the lessons, 88 years, Vietnam, computers. He did a lot of stuff after that. He does day trading, wins the stock market every year. That was his number one lesson. And so what he told me was once he got out of the Navy and got into the business world, he got into this thing called SCORE. And some people listening might know what that is, but it's kind of an older kind of like business mentoring group. And he said that was the most, he was being mentored by people in there, and he was mentoring others. And there's something very different, by the way, about giving yourself away, which has so many positive things. It's better to give than to receive. And so there's so many positive things that happen, but then always making sure that somebody's pouring into you as well. So it's that lifelong learning, and also give away what you possess, right? We always say, Scott, you can't give away what you don't possess. You need to be being poured into so you do possess, and then freely give that to other people so they can come behind you.
Let's talk about this mentorship idea.
Yeah.
All right. I was being mentored by a gentleman, and it was amazing, right? And we met once a month. We just got on for an hour, and he just poured into me. It was actually one of the guests on my podcast, and after the show, he's like, "Hey, we should have talks every month." And I was like, "Really? We should?" And he's like, "Yes, I like something about you. There's something in you I want to invest in." And so he did that. He chose to do that. And I'm so grateful for that. And I've had the opportunity to mentor. Mm-hmm. Now, it hasn't been very structured. And I think that there's another discussion we could have about that.
Sure.
But let me ask you this. If I am not being mentored right now, how would you recommend I find one? I mean, what would you do in that case?
That's a fantastic question, Scott. Throughout my years, I've been in the working world for 20 years now. Adult working world for 20 years. And what I've found is you'd be shocked how many folks get to the end of their life, and or the end of their career, not even end of life, end of career. And they desperately want to give people their experience over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And I've talked to so many of these folks, like they will ask me the other question, how do I find someone to mentor? Right. And so the idea is, we talked about this in the beginning, you should put out into the world what you want to get back. So you should let people know as you meet them, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. Do you know anybody? And you'd be shocked. You might be able to find someone very easily. Like right now, if you say, hey, Mike, I need a mentor, I probably got 3 names I could send you tomorrow. Right. Because there are folks who have expressed that desire. And so I think there's actually a lot more desire from people in the world to do this. But there's this fear, going back to the fear versus faith, of what are they going to say? How are they going to perceive me? So you have to be unapologetic about the fact that you want to be poured into, and put that out and let people come around you and find you the right person. I think that's the number one thing you can do, is make sure people know that's what you're looking for, and you'd be shocked how quickly you might find one.
Okay, let's flip it. If I want to mentor somebody, maybe I'm at this point in my career and I really want to pour into, I don't know, like, who do I just put it out there and say, hey, anybody want to mentor? Like, what do you do?
It might even be more scary on the flip side, because you're kind of saying like, hey, I feel like I have something to give to the world, but maybe nobody wants it. That's a little more scary than, hey, I'm young, or you're younger maybe, or whatever. I'm at a point in my career where I want to learn. It's kind of easy to say that, like, hey, I'm a lifelong learner. That's kind of like a positive thing. But when you flip it around, it's like, hey, I feel like I've got a lot to give, but does anyone even care or want that? And so I think getting over that fear and telling people, yeah, that's what I want to do. Again, there's groups like, business masterminds, there's SCORE, there's TIPS, there's all these different things you can get into. And if you get into some sort of like business group in your area, wherever you are, you would likely be able to find one either way. But like I said, I think it's most important that if you've got this burning passion or desire, because you know that my grandpa's number one lesson over his entire life is correct, then I think it's just important that you don't be afraid to let people know that's what you're looking for.
So that wraps us back up into this whole idea of mentorship. These people have mentored you on your journey. But I sit there and I go, okay, yeah. But at the beginning, you said that you've grown a consulting practice from $1 to $6 million. And it wasn't through like, making 400 calls a week so that you could narrow it down to 36, contracts. I mean, it wasn't like pounding the pavement. It was through being poured into by these individuals. Tell me how like how I need to reframe my thought about mentorship and how that's going to help me grow my business. Because I might say, I kind of don't have time for that. I'm in the middle of like, I really just got to go to these networking gigs. I got to work on lead generation. I got to work on this new podcast thing I'm launching, these video series I'm doing, and all these things, right? Why should I do these things?
Because not all activity is created equal. So the problem is that we feel like energy or activity is progress, but that's not true. We have a saying in Giant, which we took from Heroic Leadership, which says slow down to speed up. And there's another cliche term, which is work smarter, not harder. So that whole idea, I'll go back to the 10X idea. That book that you and I have, kind of been around in the Giant world recently is called 10X is easier than 2X. And the reason for that is if I told you need to grow your practice by 2 times next year, you would think, I need to start another podcast. I need to go to more events. I need to have more meetings. I need to grind. Your brain would immediately go to 2 times the activity. And the truth is, I don't know anyone trying to grow a consulting practice that's sitting around and only working 5 hours a week and just, I'll just do 10 and I'll double my business. You're already doing way too much work and you're already too busy. So you actually have to break your brain and actually go after wise things and niche down, like we talked about in the beginning, and go after the activity that's actually going to create those results versus just get out there and just do a flurry of things. We can trick ourselves very easily into thinking all activity is good. And the reality is there's so much noise in your day that you shouldn't be doing. And it feels like, wow, I did a lot today because you checked the boxes. But the truth is you haven't moved the needle anywhere.
One of the, I'll just probably say one of the first guests on my podcast, Unlocked, my other podcast, was Dave Anderson, leadership guru. He said this quote on the show. He was mastermind of quote. Like this dude's just a library of quotes of like draw. So he said, we confuse motion for progress and speed for direction.
There you go.
And it was this whole idea of, wow, that's crazy. And then I had another person, she's more of a life coach, Brooke Castillo, that says, talks about massive action versus passive action. And the impact that like a lot of us are doing this like passive action thing because we think that we're moving, but it's not really moving the needle at all. Yep. The massive action is where it actually, takes place.
So I'll tell you this. Mentors, what they do is they've gone before you. You only need to be one step ahead of someone to mentor them. That's another thing to take out the fear is if I've gone one step ahead of you, I can bring you one step further. Oftentimes my mentors were 100 steps further, but it doesn't matter. The point is they've done something that I want to do. You should find people that have done things you want to do and go listen to them. Don't listen to your neighbor who has never done what you want to do. Listen to someone who's done it. That's who you want to mentor you. And what happens is because they've gone before you, they've already made mistakes. And they can say, hey, you can make different mistakes than the ones I've made. So it speeds up your learning and goes, I'm not going to go do this activity because my mentor said that's a waste of your time. So the idea of these mentors around you is they know how to help you get what you want. And they have lots of wisdom that they can help you short circuit those things or shortcut, and not bother with all that flurry of activity.
What do you know now that you wish you would have known when you started your consulting practice?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. Like just yesterday, I was reading a post about this idea of working from rest versus trying to rest from work. And again, another cliche thing, but the reality is that that's such a huge thing that I think we miss. And even when I do it, I'll take a little bit of time and I'll unplug and I'll get my brain and I have so much energy to think strategically. And then when I get back, there's so much progress made after I do that. So going back to your thing of a flurry of activity, feeling like progress, but it's not. I think I would say like that truly that thing of take time to slow down and reflect and look at the stuff that you really think you should be doing. And then you'll have plenty of energy to do it. It's that idea of taking the bad client and letting it cause resentment. It's like, hey, I did that once. I'm not going to do that again. And so don't fall into the same trap, but you only do that when you slow down and take time to reflect. Matter of fact, and that is the big one. Back in the day, there was a hospice group that did a survey of people at the end of life. And they asked them, what's the number one thing you regret at the end of your life, if there's something there? And the number one answer they got is that they didn't slow down and reflect enough. So, and I've actually heard that from a leadership guru as well. So it's been done multiple times. You can go Google it. It was a nurse in a hospice group that did it. But the idea is, I wish I would have known 20 years ago to slow down and reflect. And I think it really does help you go further.
For those coaches, consultants out in the world right now that are struggling, they're hitting a ceiling, or maybe they're just launching something and they're just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I'm just like I think I should be doing this thing. But then, like I said, you have those people on the other side. They're like, I've been doing this thing for a few years and I gotta break out of this ceiling because I keep hitting it.
Yep.
What's the word of hope, the statement of hope that you would give them if they're feeling discouraged, feeling beat down, feeling like they need to take that next step?
I'll quote a friend of ours, Justin Westbrooks, who lives there with you in Atlanta. One time at a giant retreat in Oklahoma, he said, aloneness is a lie. So what happens when we start to feel stuck is because we feel alone. If you had somebody who is incredibly encouraging around you, like Jeremy Kubicek or like my dad or someone who's just, larger than life, everything's an opportunity, it's really hard to get stuck because they're constantly pushing you to see what's out there. And so I would say aloneness is a lie. You need to get around people who are doing the things that you want to do and continue to be learning from them and growing with them. And so another quote that I heard back in the day, Scott, was, you will end up becoming like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so you kind of have to take stock of like, who am I spending my time with? I'll end up like them. It doesn't mean, by the way, let's say you have a family member, a brother or sister who you love, and you spend time with them every week. You do like dinner, and that's family. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, think about who you're choosing to spend time with outside of your responsibilities, and go, who you should be finding 5 or some number of people who are doing the things you want to do and be growing with them.
Amen. And that is so true. And I think if you take that stock, that inventory right now, you'll start to see some connections, right? You'll be like, oh, I don't act like them, or I don't do that thing, or whatever. And I think it's a mindset thing. It's like, and us, as we're growing our businesses, push yourself to hang out with those people who you don't think would ever hang out with you.
Absolutely.
You're like, oh, that, Mike Oppedahl, he untouchable. That dude, he wouldn't hang out with me. What? Like all day, dude. Like, right? We're going to hang out, right? You and me?
Next week on a cruise.
That's right. That's right. We are.
Here's the thing, dude. I totally agree with you. In the end, we're all just blokes. I don't care what person's name is on a stage, or, the books they've written, or even the things they've done in their life. In the end, we're all just blokes. The closer you get to people who are famous, you realize they're just like you. And sometimes they actually have attributes you don't even want. So the point about that is to go, there's nobody untouchable. There's a whole, I can't remember the book now. I'll have to figure it out for you. You can put it in your show notes, but there's a book about, it's kind of like the 2 degrees of separation or the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but you're only a couple jumps away from getting to anyone you want. And there's a book written about people who did it, who were like, I wanted to be in front of this politician or this CEO. And they did it by just making a couple of reach outs. So I would just say 100%, don't fool yourself. People are not untouchable, and go force yourself to hang out with the folks you want to be around.
Mike, it's a blessing to know you, man. You are a bright light in my life, and I appreciate you. Appreciate everything you've done for me, for being on the show and inspiring and helping words of wisdom and guidance for everybody out there, man. Keep rocking.
Awesome, bro. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Mike makes my heart smile. Not only because he's just he's still got so much energy. He just wants to pour into so many people. This idea, it's no wonder mentorship is the key theme of what's helped him grow his practice and his business to what it is now. So niches in the riches. Okay. I said that wrong. Sorry, Mike. Riches in the niches is what I really meant to say. Riches in the niches. Scale down. We've heard that before. We've heard people preach it, but it's kind of scary. Right? It's kind of scary. I've preached this for a long time with my brand strategy consulting clients and myself. And it's hard. It is very hard. So I don't want to say that it's easy. It is hard and it is scary. Number 2, abundance mindset. How can we think abundantly instead of having this scarcity mindset of limitation, of loss, of fear? And then last, certainly not least, and the whole theme of this show is mentor and be mentored. And he gave you some tips about how to do that. It's something that is crucial. And I didn't understand the impact until Mark Goulston, who was my mentor, was pouring into me. And that has been a significant piece of my life. And I'll never forget Mark because of who he was and is to me. Mark since passed away earlier this year. And it was a huge hit to the whole community, including me. And So I want to dedicate this show to Mark and all the mentors out there who are pouring into so many people. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for joining me today on How They Do That. If you found this helpful, please rate the show wherever you listen to podcasts. You see, I help you, you help me. That's how it works. Oh, and please do not keep this to yourself. Share the show with a fellow coach who could also use these insights. Keep exploring, my friends. Never stop asking how'd they do that? Because with every question, you get closer and closer to refining your business and scaling your impact.